Welcome, everybody, to an impromptu episode of Axioms on Trial. This time we are actually live. We totally didn't just do about 3 minutes of us thinking we were live at all. Did not happen. We will wipe that from our memories. Didn't happen. Cease, what's going on, bud? How you doing today?
Good. I'm good. I'm excited to see what clip you have prepared for me.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited myself. We were actually really excited to get into it until we realized I hadn't hit the live button, so it's all on me. But yeah, to give a shout out, I see some people, No Hair Mama Bear, Pasta Mike, which, by the way, speaking of Pasta Mike and Murder Shed Steve, go out of your way to go subscribe to the Atheist Roundtable, Empathetic Atheist, Neil the 604 Atheist, Skylar Fiction, Math Pig, GeoSam, and in fact, I think Cease, you actually wanted to mention something in regards to GeoSam from the last show.
Yeah, so you read a question that he asked in the last episode to me, and I don't know if I was just exhausted or misheard it, but I completely misheard what the question was. He had asked, how do you prove something along the lines of how do you prove morality is external to us?
Mm-hmm.
And I had understood it as, how do you prove external reality to us, as opposed to morality? I read it as reality.
Oh,
so I went into a whole other thing that had nothing to do with the question. So I just wanted to quickly address what he asked, because it's a good question. And I just wanted to say that I'm not arguing that morality exists independent of us, although I wouldn't say it's purely like a human thing. I would say it's a product of consciousness. So we are part of the universe. Consciousness is part of the universe. And by studying consciousness in its possible states, like suffering and well-being and those kind of things, we can ground those experiences in multiple ways, whether it's from a phenomenological approach or neuroscience or psychology, even just basic common sense. We can start sort of to map out what type of society and lifestyle creates, higher well-being than not, and morality relates to those questions. Is how I would put it.
And it's actually it's interesting that you throw that kind of caveat in there from the last episode to kind of correct it, because the clip that I bring can segue from that pretty well from that into this, and I haven't really prepped Cease on this as much. I watched this clip when it came out, so I'm a little rusty on it, but I remember just thinking this was absolutely the first person I thought of was you. So I'm actually very excited for you to see it.
Yeah, I have no idea what clip it is. So.
Yeah, and so what we'll do is we'll go through it. It's actually Capturing Christianity clip with William Lane Craig addressing a couple points that Sam Harris made in one of their infamous debates. I believe I can't remember which one it is exactly off the top of my head, but I know they didn't really have like an open discussion in that one. It was a very formal one. But you'll know exactly which one when I play the clip. So it's basically going to be William Lane Craig rebutting to this, or at least attempting to, and then us going over that clip. So it's almost like an inception of clips. But I'm going to just go ahead and pull it up and we'll get started on it.
I can't hear it.
Oh yeah, that's so I always have this issue anyway. Well, we'll get that started. By the way, if you guys use StreamYard in the future, always make sure you hit the audio thing. But so I'll give a little prep work while I get this set up here. From my perspective, at least, I'm not. This clip isn't to say William Lane Craig is dumb or stupid or his arguments. It's just to kind of show, at least when you're at that level, from my perspective, why whataboutisms or two quoques or any of these types of these concepts are very important to pay attention to, because I feel like you should not be getting them from somebody that is as seasoned as he is. And so I'll see what you think about it. It could be a mistake on my part, at least in how I've analyzed it, but I do think it is worth I think it's worth everybody's attention. Hence the title of this clip: or the title of our show today, which is this is a clip everybody should see of William Lane Craig. It deserves more attention.
Agents of God's will. There's absolutely nothing that Dr. Craig can say.
Audio good?
Yeah, I can hear it.
Against their behavior in moral terms.
Stream not good, apparently.
Apart from his own faith-based claim that they're praying to the wrong God. If they had the right God, what they were doing would be good on divine command theory. Now, I'm obviously not saying that Dr. Craig or all religious people are psychopaths and psychotics, but this to me is the true horror of religion. It allows perfectly decent and sane people to believe by the billions what only lunatics could believe on their own. Okay, if you wake up tomorrow morning thinking that saying a few Latin words over your pancakes is going to turn them into the body of Elvis Presley, okay, you have lost your mind. Okay. But if you think more or less the same thing about a cracker and the body of Jesus, you're just a Catholic.
Now, here again, I think atheists so often fail to realize that's what sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander.
All right, so we're going to pause her right there. Are you familiar with what that phrase is?
No, I've never heard of it.
What's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. Okay, and so essentially, what you can break that down to is what is appropriate in one case is also appropriate in the other case in question. And I think that's a huge thing that we need to highlight here, because when you look at this, when he says what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander, and you break that down to what is appropriate in one case is also appropriate in the other case in question, I just would want to highlight that. That's all I'm going to throw out there.
All right.
Just going to highlight that, and we'll move on. We'll move on.
The same point applies to Harris's view. On the naturalistic view, on atheism.
Do you see any problem already?
Yeah, I already know what he's going to say. The same thing he said in the debate after Harris demonstrated him to be completely wrong. He's going to say, and we'll play it and we'll see if I'm guessing correctly.
Sure.
He's going to say that Harris has no grounds to say what is moral and what isn't, because in naturalism all you have is just random chance and nothing intrinsically moral, and we have no grounds to say what's good and bad. It's going to be something along those lines.
Okay, and so that is probably what I was going to say, but what stuck out for me the most out of anything was, and maybe you can help me out here, because I feel like you're the expert in this, way above me. The title of it refutes atheist Sam Harris, but he's making claims about Craig's worldview, correct?
You mean Harris's worldview?
Well, no. Harris in the original clip is making claims about divine command theory, right?
Right.
Yeah. So would you think that Dr. Craig should be defending the arguments he's putting forth, or talking about naturalism?
Yeah, he should be. This is the evasions and manipulations that apologetics do all day long. Instead of trying to defend his own worldview, he's going to attack Sam Harris's worldview. By the way, get his view wrong, explain it incorrectly, and not actually address what Harris has said. It's trying to sort of put a smokescreen against the problem. He's not defending himself. As a tactic, he's attacking Harris to try to sort of divert the attention. And I deal with this type of approach over and over again from apologists who can't face reality, of the situation.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't off base there, and now we can kind of put your prediction to the test.
Plausibly, there are no objective moral values and duties, and therefore millions and millions of people can engage in horrible and despotic acts, such as we saw in Marxist-Leninism or in Nazism.
Did you think it was going to escalate that quick?
Okay, I will say I did not expect him to already jump there.
Did you think
That
Dr. Craig would pull that out of his pocket at the very
I
beginning?
will say, in retrospect, I should have expected that. That's always the go-to. But see, this is why, like, I can't control myself from being visually frustrated when I hear this kind of bullshit. Because for someone, and I would like, I don't know if we'll ever be able to, but I would love to have Craig on our show one day if it ever gets to the point. Because he talks about these things as though they're so obvious. And meanwhile, no one in the moral sphere in philosophy takes divine command theory seriously. They haven't for a century.
Well, I mean, because it's as simple as you're given a dilemma, and there's something you have to give up, and everybody wants to go around that, not either give up what you have to give up in either predicament or whichever side of the dilemma you face. They just kind of try to mold around that in that sense. So yeah, I would agree.
He just ignores what is obviously the case by, again, it's just evasions. But let's see how worse it gets.
Yeah, I almost forgot how fast that ramped up.
National Socialist Germany. And the same question could be posed of Harris. He thinks that the basis of objective moral values is the flourish.
So is that not we are not in like a whataboutism already, like where he's just, well, what about Harris? What about your view that can lead to this?
Yeah, again, which
has nothing to do with what Harris is. Harris isn't talking about naturalism at all in any sense. In fact, anybody could present the argument he's presenting and probably be in anything else if they wanted to be, right?
Well, Harris's worldview is a naturalistic one, but that's not what the clip addresses.
Exactly.
So let's say that Harris was wrong in his approach. Craig has done nothing to actually defend himself from Harris's attack there. So at best case scenario, they're both wrong, according to what Craig is doing.
Sure.
Of sentient life. Well, I could say, but what if the flourishing of sentient life were not the basis for objective moral values? Then what? Then you would have nothing to say other than your faith-based claim that the flourishing of sentient life is the basis of moral values. It's the same thing that he accuses me of. Now, what I would say with regard to the Muslim is that the Muslim is worshiping a God who doesn't exist. There is no such person as Allah as described in the Quran. And therefore, we can be grateful that moral values and duties are not determined by Allah.
All right.
So,
okay.
How many things have we switched to already?
Oh, it's just horrible.
Should we recap?
The first thing is that he just said, what if I propose that moral values weren't dependent on well-being? Well, so what if you say that? What you haven't, just saying it doesn't mean anything. What is your argument to try to get away from morality having to be dependent on well-being? Because if you look at any kind of notion of morality, even if it's not concerned with consequences, it's at least concerned with well-being and suffering to some degree. Mm-hmm. Now, cultures disagree on what will actually lead to that state, and that's where you get conflict and differences of beliefs and opinions. But the concern with that goal has always been the case throughout the history of philosophy. They're just different tactics as to how to go about that. And I mean, there are a couple strange attempts to sort of divert altogether from that, but it doesn't go anywhere. Mm-hmm. And even his worldview is still concerned with well-being and suffering, as Harris points out in the debate. He's concerned with well-being for eternity with God and suffering for eternity in hell. So it's not like he's shown something different in that approach. He's only extended the same concern for a belief in eternity and the supernatural. So he just said, I don't know. It's just so weird to me to hear someone that's, supposedly on that level make a claim, not an argument, say nothing to support how he could make that claim, and then move on as though he had resolved or exposed Harris for some mistake.
All while not defending the arguments towards his worldview.
Yeah, not defending his arguments against his worldview, and then saying, well, luckily we know that Muslims are worshiping the wrong God. Not realizing that he has no more evidence to support his ideology. They use the same exact types of arguments.
Well, and it's frustrating from my perspective, from a guy who invokes something like the Kalam cosmological argument, which if we apply that and say me and you like just agreed to it, right? Let's just say the Kalam gets you to God. Let's just say it does. You still have all of your work ahead of you for whatever God it is that you would be invoking at that point. And for him to incite or invoke that exact principle for the argument of God without actually ever really providing why it's specifically the Christian God, and then kind of that, well, we know, the Islam or the Muslim God isn't, true, or from his perspective, I just don't see the grounds for that are even worse, because now it's like, I mean, you're literally using the same arguments that I could, this is the underdetermination principle at that point. I could literally just come up with thousands of different gods using that argument.
Yeah, it's the same arguments from, why would people die for what they believe? Arguments, about, the supernatural and miracles. I mean, he'll specify, he'll aim it towards the resurrection. He'll say, why would Christians give up their life if this wasn't true? Mm-hmm. People believe things and have given up their life for delusions since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
And the fact he thinks, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, him and Bert Ehrman, or what's his name?
Bart
Ehrman, yeah, debated, and his idea that the resurrection is a historical fact is laughable. Ehrman pointed out, rightfully so, that history in principle has no claims to make about the supernatural, because history is trying to tell us what most likely happened in the past. Mm-hmm. We can't even begin to talk about likelihood with the supernatural because we can't even prove that such a thing exists. It's not even a matter of probability. It's a matter of we can't even get there.
Yeah, and everything at that point, I mean, from my perspective, I mean, it just seems to be, you can't say when the arguments, at least when the minimal facts or whatever they would use. I know that's more of a Habermas's argument, I believe, but it seems that you're always kind of in this situation where no matter what insane natural explanation I can come up with, it's always by default more likely, because I can find an implicit basis for it, or some kind of empirical basis for it in some case, whereas I don't really have any data point. So to suggest that 0 is bigger than 0.01, even if that data point is as small as that, then it just seems to me to miss the point of what's most probable or most likely to be true. But
and that's, I said that when I debated Pastor John on the resurrection, the one night, that's what I said to him, because to my explanations that I was trying to provide for why Christianity developed the way it did, his response was, well, you're just sort of assuming or speculating. And it's like, yeah, so are you. Except my speculations at least have a grounding in something that I can point to, that there are studies about it.
Exactly.
Collective hysteria.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, we just have an implicit understanding of mass hysteria or hallucinations or any other natural explanation that we could substitute.
Or just failure of the senses and that lead to wrong beliefs. Not even any kind of mental breakdown of that sort.
Yeah, just being convinced. I mean, look at as many people are convinced that crystals heal, even though we can demonstrably show them that they won't, and people continuously, end up in hospitals or die because they want to apply some homeopathic, remedy to their thing, and even that data pool is not enough to convince the rest of the people otherwise. But
and all they have is premises that they can't defend on any level, other than just saying, "Well, I have faith in it." Well, who cares?
Sure. Well, let's move on. Let's see.
Rather, moral values are rooted in the essential nature of God himself, which is necessarily good, is not a result of human convention or arbitrary decision, and that his commands to us reflect his necessarily good moral nature. So I think this provides a very firm, non-arbitrary, non-conventional basis for objective moral values and duties, something that I do not think atheism can do.
I was going to talk a little bit.
Okay, I want to play that clip back real quick because there's something in there that I think is a little nugget that gets passed on.
Provides a very firm,
so right here,
decision, and that his commands to us reflect his necessarily good moral nature. So I think this provides a very firm, non-arbitrary, non-conventional
hold on, necessarily
decision, and that his commands to us reflect his necessarily
reflect.
Yeah, aside from the fact that there is nothing, his position is entirely arbitrary, because God, when you talk about God's nature, if it's first of all, if it's divine command theory, has nothing to do with nature, has to do with the command. So if God decides, hey, I decide that rape is good because he commanded it, that makes it good. If he wants to go about this other way, where now he's talking about nature, well then he should be able to recognize that Harris is talking about nature as well. You're just making one less assumption. There's nothing about what Harris's position that has anything to do with mere social convention or mere opinion. Okay, nothing of his worldview has anything to do with either of those claims. So he's completely strawmanning what Harris's position actually is, which is what they have to do because they can't actually address the real situation because they have no actual answers in response. So he has to make it as though Harris is talking about something arbitrary, as opposed to also being grounded in nature, and something that just up to opinion, which Harris doesn't mention opinion once in his argument. So it's just awful.
Yep. And also what doesn't come up once is specific defeaters for what Sam is saying about his worldview. But we'll carry on. We still have it's not looking likely, but we still have 3 minutes in the clip.
I mean, so much bullshit in two minutes. It's just shocking.
To be fair, 3 minutes. But
3 minutes, right?
But yes, completely. I'm trying to give them the credit here, at least a little bit.
Moral nature. So I think this provides a very firm, non-arbitrary, non-conventional basis for objective moral values.
I love how he says it's non-arbitrary.
Entirely arbitrary.
Something that I do not think atheism can do.
So all that said, it's something that atheism cannot do. Why? Craig, why can't atheism do that? Why not provide that? Simply stating it is just stating the position you have. I mean, right. I could say, yeah, theism doesn't do that. All right, guys, we'll see you on the next episode of Axioms on Trial. It doesn't solve anything. There's no argument to be had there.
First of all, atheism itself is not a moral position. It's amoral. Atheism is just a lack of a belief in God. So Harris's argument is a naturalistic one and a secular one. But there are many atheists who don't believe in it for the wrong reasons. But it's not an issue of atheism. He's defining the whole thing incorrectly at every step.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say my main problem that I'm kind of so focused on is just the fact that it's. I mean, the face here just describes it. It's kind of like it's like I gotcha, but he didn't explain what you gotcha on. Like he didn't.
Well, he said he's given no arguments. He just made statements.
I was going to talk a little bit more about. Well, I'll just mention this. So I hosted a debate or discussion between Matt Flanagan and Joshua Thibodeau on the Euthyphro dilemma, which kind of touches on some of the issues.
It's actually a pretty good discussion. I'd suggest people go watch that.
At least in the first part of this clip that Sam Harris was touching on, it's like these other religions, they believe these things. And if that was true, these would be really horrible things. But on divine command theory, this theory
Hold on. Illuminati confirmed. Sorry. But anyway, go on.
of ethics, it would seem to follow that these horrible things are therefore moral to do. And that just seems really weird. It's sort of an argument against divine command theory. So if you want to hear a dialogue about some of those objections, check out that dialogue that I hosted. Did you want to say something on that?
Not further. I think what
okay,
I've
I heard you
already
take a breath.
said pertain.
Doesn't want to. Well, he doesn't want to address the most important dilemma that's part of the entire conversation.
Right. He just has nothing to say. Quoque looks constantly puzzled. He has like a frozen, puzzled expression.
I didn't think you were going to ask me that, young lad.
Pertains to the point.
Okay, yeah. So there's a lot of interesting things that Matt Flanagan in that debate points out. So I just
my problem is you don't deserve to have that that I just defeated it thing when you didn't offer a defeater for any of the positions.
I said nothing.
Recommend that you check that out. I did want to say something else though about the end of it. He says that religion can make otherwise sane people believe insane things, and I want to say that.
So Cameron is actually, I have to give Cameron credit here because he's actually trying to like the track was, over here and Dr. Craig got a hold of that train and said, we're getting off because clearly I need to just whataboutism to quoque. I just need to just go off and just not address my points and just talk about what another, person's worldview is, despite the fact that they could have held any worldview and made the exact same claims against yours. So Cameron, I got to give him credit here because Cameron is actually trying to steer it back. Let's see if that actually happens 4 minutes and 10 seconds into this.
That science can make otherwise smart people believe some insane things, quote unquote, insane things. And all that we mean by that is that there are some claims.
Any comments on that statement?
I don't know what he's talking about. Wait. Scientists don't believe insane things for no reason. There are certain observations in science that are counterintuitive, that sound strange or hard to conceptualize. But there's a grounding for those beliefs.
What if he means like something like determinism or something like what appears to be a violation of the laws of thought, like non-contradiction or identity with quantum mechanics or something like that. Like, let's just give him the benefit of the doubt. Do you think
if that was the case, he would be misrepresenting the science?
Well, my thing is that even if that seems because it's just going off of like what he's saying is like my intuition is like this makes people believe crazy things, but if the evidence supports what you are deeming to be crazy, it doesn't really matter what your opinions or your feelings are. I mean, if that's the facts, those are the facts. I wouldn't want determinism to be true in some aspects of like certain, because I would love to hold other people accountable rather than be waiting for like some, psychological development in terms of medicine that we could help fix these people that are basically just victims of their biology in a sense. Of course I would love to switch that to some culpable ability of being able to be responsible for your actions in that sense. But my feelings on determinism or free will is like it's irrespective of, the truth is irrespective of how I feel about it.
Right.
I feel like that gets so construed in so many ways where it's like scientists can believe these things, these crazy things.
Let's see what these things are.
Well, you could think anything. You could think like, things in evolution are crazy. And I would be like, yeah, it is crazy. It is a crazy thing. But I mean, it's supported and it's true. But yes, you could look at it from your perspective if it's crazy. It's just incredulity to say that you don't believe it because it sounds crazy to you.
That have a very low prior probability. Just on the face of it, they seem really weird, okay? Take a scientific example. Atomic theory implies that most of the things that we interact with are made up mostly of empty space. That seems like an insane thing.
I'm not even sure that that's actually true. I think he's misrepresenting what the science says.
I can't really comment on that because my understanding of the stuff is very limited. But again, there's big difference between scientific observations built on theories that are testable, reproducible, etc., and I believe I'm eating or drinking the blood of Jesus when I do a magic spell. Like it's on the same thing.
Yeah, it's and like this, the example cited way back, over there is the the infamous, saying some Latin phrases over your pancakes and the name of Elvis Presley. It's a completely different. It's a different claim to be had for somebody to make the judgment that it is crazy, as opposed to what is has an amalgamation of evidence.
Are made up mostly of empty space. That seems like an insane thing to believe.
That seems like an insane thing to believe. Okay.
Until you start to gather evidence for atomic theory.
I love that little caveat at the end. Until you gather the evidence for it. I would agree there, Cameron.
In quantum mechanics, there's a thing called quantum entanglement, where two different particles, even we have a lot of evidence now that this happens across vast distances, where two particles can start to do some of the same things faster than the speed of light. There's this sort of spooky action at a distance, according to that's what Albert Einstein said about it. And so,
pause if you guys want to go actually see more of a and not in depth, but a conversation with somebody, Cease's brother, who's teaches quantum physics. There's an episode on the Atheist Roundtable. There's a really good discussion there, and then our first episode is a good one. So if you guys are interested in those, we have content. We will hopefully have more content with David in the future as well.
For sure.
So there's things that we discover in science that just seem wacky on the face of it, but really what matters,
I don't know
it's
what
sort of an argument.
I don't know what just happened there. Sorry, guys.
Against divine command theory. So if you want,
sorry about that. Let me go back. I think we're at 410.
People believe insane things, and I want to say that science can make otherwise smart people believe some insane things, quote unquote insane things. And all that we mean by that is that there are some claims that have a very low prior probability. Just on the face of it, they seem really weird. Okay, take a scientific example. Atomic theory implies that most of the things that we interact with are made up mostly of empty space. That seems like an insane thing to believe until you start to gather evidence for atomic theory. In quantum mechanics, there's a thing called quantum entanglement, where two different particles, even we have a lot of evidence now that this happens across vast distances, where two particles can start to do some of the same things faster than the speed of light. There's this sort of spooky action at a distance, according to that's what Albert Einstein said about it. And so there's things that we discover in science that just seem wacky on the face of it, but really what matters, and this is the same thing when it comes to Christianity, religion, really what matters is not the prior probability of something, but the evidence for it, and whether or not we have good reasons to think that thing is true in the.
Sure. You're Mike, you're muted.
Sorry about that. So it's not the prior probability, but in references what he's trying to make towards what I would believe would be what people use in reference to the resurrection. I mean, what would you say about that?
Well, I agree that it's not how it sounds, but the evidence for the claim. The problem is that they have no evidence for their claims. What they call evidence is flawed in every regard. So it's all fallacies, misconceptions about science, misconception about psychology and human nature, and wishful thinking. Provide me what this evidence is. And if the evidence is, well, the Bible says so, and I believe it's revelation, that's not evidence. That's the claim. If you think, well, if you say, why did Christians die for these beliefs if they're not true? All you got to do is look at history and every other group that died for things they believed in that was contradictory to one another. So I agree with the general premise of what it's saying. It's just that when you get to the actuality of the situation, they have no evidence to provide.
Yeah, I would agree.
The long run.
Yes, key to Harris's statement or argument, and the audience may have missed this, was the word faith-based. He characterized the theistic view as faith-based, which suggests there isn't any evidence for it.
Okay, so I would expect at this point, the only things out of Dr. Craig's mouth is to present the evidence for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's kind of where I would be at. I mean, that's at least if I was in his position, or in any position where someone wasn't believing my claim, and they're telling me it's faith-based. So, like, evolution, right? So let's tell them that they're saying my beliefs on evolution are faith-based. I wouldn't then start talking about not that. The first thing out of my mouth would be, well, let's look at some vestigial structures. Let's look at Osteanus mexicanus. Like, why does it have remnants of eyes if it doesn't have it? If it doesn't lend credit to a common ancestor and something, like if it's blind, a blind fish and has remnants of eyes. You know, why do we see this? Why do we see vestigial structures in snakes, rib cages? Like, why do we see these things? Or homologous structures like in embryology, the tails being similar at the early stages of development. Why do we have that? We can show you all these things, right? And someone else could apply their hypothesis on why that's the case. But the hypothesis that we have that is providing the future testable predictions is what's going to be right in that case. So I would expect him to do the exact same thing that I would want to do, at least in that situation, where if someone's putting me on trial and trying to figure out why I believe what I believe in that sense, the first thing I'm going to do is, oh man, I'm bringing the heat. I'm going to explain to him why it's true. And I almost like welcome it. I love it. I like salivate off the thought. I have a feeling he's not going to do that.
No.
But as you say, Cameron, if we have good evidence for the existence of God and for grounding moral values in God, then you escape his criticism. On the contrary, I think it's...
If you do that, you escape his criticism. Well, we got 30 seconds left in the clip.
Harris's view that is faith-based. I can't think of any reason on a naturalistic, atheistic view for thinking that the flourishing of sentient life is somehow morally valuable.
I mean, it's shocking that a person who's supposed to be, you know, in academia, or even a person with basic common sense, it's like, you know, I mean, it's hard to even know how to respond because it's such a ridiculous statement that he just made. I mean, it's hard to, there's no reason to see why well-being could have anything to do, and human flourishing could have anything to do with moral value.
Mm-hmm.
Then why do we not have a concern towards rocks, morally speaking? Because we don't think rocks can suffer. What else could we be concerned by? Why would it be wrong to rape and kill and steal? Because it causes suffering. I mean, it's as common sense. Any person with any level of empathy and grounding in reality, you don't need a degree. You don't need a philosophy degree to recognize that this is absurd what he's saying.
Well, to me, it seems, and I could be wrong. I don't want to misdiagnose the fallacy here, but is he not answering criticism with criticism?
Yeah, I mean, he's not. Well,
so.
Yeah.
Would he not be committing a tu quoque fallacy here by avoiding his own thing, by turning it back on the accuser, and you answered criticism with criticism?
Yeah, not only is he not actually defending his claims, he's just saying I have evidence and not providing it. Two, he's strawmanning Harris's position as saying that he has no basis to ground morality and well-being, even though he clearly does and has. He's saying that Harris's position is about opinion and mere convention, which is completely false. Harris spent more than an hour breaking down why it has to do with nature. And three, he just hiding and redirecting the attention on another problem rather than defending himself. And again, this claim that there's no reason why we should care about well-being or think that morality could relate to well-being. Then how is it different in the context of God? Like, why should we care about being in heaven with God? Why should we care what God wants, what he asks us to do? To just say, well, it's goodness and it's his nature, you're not explaining, if the naturalist perspective has an is-ought problem, which these people want to claim it does, which I reject, so does their worldview. You don't escape that issue.
Sure. And that's actually one thing we'll do here on the future. So if you're watching here in the future or right now, we're going to get into the is-ought problem at some point and dissect that on a live video. And then me and Cease haven't really talked about this yet, but I've been wanting to work on a kind of a narration video in regards to the is-ought problem and kind of going over those in those regards. So be on the lookout on that. If you're not familiar with the is-ought problem, look into David Hume, who's presented it. And I think a lot of people don't really realize how the problem was presented in his writings is like a little blurb in some aspects where I think it's blown up as much as it is interesting to me in what you said, that you don't escape that exact problem you raise in your own worldview in the one that you're attacking. So
yeah, and also I actually think that a lot of people misrepresent what Hume is actually trying to say there. Regardless, I don't think it's the problem people think it is.
Sure. Oh, that's the entire thing. So he did
Nothing.
So he literally ends on a tu quoque. Let's just go back just to make sure it is what I think it is.
Thing is true in the long run.
And for the audience here, we'll just pull this back up. We'll read this. You avoided have to engage with criticism by turning it back on the accuser. You answered criticism with criticism. Let's kind of see if that fits. This is a puzzle piece that fits here.
For it, and whether or not we have good reasons to think that thing is true in the long run.
Yes, key to Harris's statement or argument, and the audience may have missed this, was the word faith-based. He characterized the theistic view as faith-based.
Okay, argument towards the theistic view as faith-based. Okay, that's the argument, right? So Dr. Craig, your worldview is faith-based, coming from Sam Harris.
Which suggests there isn't any evidence for it. But as you say, Cameron, if we have good evidence for the existence of God and for grounding moral values in God, then you escape his criticism. On the contrary, I think it's...
So you escape his criticism if you escape his criticism.
Harris's view that it's faith.
It sounds like a tautology to me. It's like, here, I have this argument where I need to escape the criticism, but if you escape his criticism, you've escaped.
No. He's saying if you have evidence in God and evidence to ground morality in God, then his criticism is faulty because it's not actually representing the theist worldview correctly. The problem is you don't have evidence for your worldview.
Yeah, exactly. So instead of applying it, I mean, you're literally saying nothing different than... I mean, if I had no evidence for flat earther and I use that same argument, it wouldn't get me anywhere. It would just be, if I had evidence.
Like, it would be great if you had evidence, then
yeah, it's like, okay, well then what is it?
Faith-based. I can't think of any reason on a naturalistic, atheistic view for thinking that the flourishing of sentient life is somehow morally valuable.
So answering the last part of his thing about how naturalism would view that wouldn't be a tu quoque fallacy. I feel like by definition, like a walking billboard, but could be wrong there. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong.
I mean, how could it not be morally valuable? What else could be morally valuable but that? What I don't know what he thinks morality is if that's his approach. Because again, if you throw God into the equation, you're still concerned with well-being.
Yeah, even in the aspect of you go to heaven or your hell. I mean, you're concerned about the essential, your eternal well-being.
I mean, this is just detachment from reality to the most severe level. I mean, it's just...
Yeah. Well, how was it? How was it for you? Do you? It's not something you like. It's not. I assume you don't need a cigarette after that, like a good clip.
Well, it just, I don't want to like. I don't want to insult the guy too much. Just like I'm sure he's a nice guy, and who knows, maybe someday he'll actually talk to us. I don't want to badmouth him too much, but I just can't take him seriously.
Sure.
Like I can't take his argument seriously. I mean, these are things that get resolved in a 101 introduction.
Well, to be fair, I don't think he would take your arguments or my arguments seriously. So I think we'd be on equal footing there. You know what I mean? From the perspectives, not to say
Yeah.
Just to say from the perspective, I don't think he takes these arguments seriously as well. Perhaps.
Yeah, but the thing is, we're not strawmanning his position.
Very, very solid point.
There was nothing about his response to Harris in the debate and in this clip that actually addresses what Harris is saying. He's just making a claim, not defending it, and acting like he's resolved anything.
Mm.
I don't know. It just, it gets to a point where it's just, the confusion is so puzzling. Like, sort of the detachment from where this, historically, what these terms have related to. That it's like, if you don't think that morality, any conversation about morality relates to well-being, it's like thinking that gravity doesn't relate to physics. Like, you're just playing a different language game altogether. Like, you're not talking about the same thing. You're just somewhere else. I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense.
Sure. Yeah. No, well, I'm glad we got through that. We're all safe. Nobody's harmed. Nobody's mentally distraught from it. No, I'm kidding.
I'm a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit in pain right now.
But yeah, and I think I'll pull it back up. I didn't really get to see the comments on it, but I want to see the consensus down here. Is you have missed some words in your title. You mean William Lane Craig attempts and fails to refute atheist Sam Harris?
Oh, that's wonderful.
He did fail. Hilarious.
That's great.
That's lovely. This was horrible. Well, so yeah, you go down there if you guys want to.
This man has a doctorate.
Yeah.
So that's how I feel. Like, what?
Yeah, and that's how. To be fair, and when you have somebody on, because I would love for him to. My thing is, like, I would love to. You don't want to ever talk about the person's arguments when they can't defend them or anything like that. And I can understand that, but the problem is that his whole time for the 6 minutes on capturing Christianity was to give his rebuttals to what Sam had said in that aspect, and all he did was attack naturalism and apply whataboutisms or two quoque fallacies.
But that's exactly what it is in the debate. In their debate, never once did he actually address the points brought forth.
Yeah,
he just attacked his position, explained it incorrectly, and then never defended his position. That's what he does. Mm-hmm. The best debate that I watched with him in it was against Sean Carroll, to where, I mean, it was just, I almost felt bad for Craig. Like, it was an embarrassment.
Yeah.
Craig said something about a physicist, how the physicist's position maybe is a hunch, not grounded in evidence, and Carroll just tore into him limb by limb. It was just, everybody should watch that clip. Sean Carroll against William Lane Craig. That's why anytime you have somebody that actually knows the science, who can correct atheist misconceptions, they're just left with nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and so to be fair, like, I wanted to do like one of the first episodes that we all talked behind the scenes, me, you, Max, and breaking down some William Lane Craig arguments. So when I found this clip, I was like, oh, this is perfect for a night me and Cease can actually break these down between the two of us at some point as like a little one-off before we bring in the actual clips. But in the future, for our future content, I'm going to try to prepare a lot of slides and things like that I can pull up to really go in depth on the arguments at hand, getting down to every detail that we could possibly do, and hopefully we can do those in our narration videos as well.
That'd be great. I would love that.
Yeah, would be really good. But I would say hopefully this Saturday, for everybody out there, we'll have either I'm planning on having Adam Rich on if Saturday works for him, so that would be a conversation between you and him. If we can't do that, we'll break down clips between me, you, and Max, or we can do both hopefully in the same day if we all have time. But if not, hopefully we'll figure that out. But we thank everybody that's tuned in for these clips. Or Cease, do you have anything that you want to mention before we sign off?
No. If you're having Adam Rich on Saturday, I'll see if my brother can jump in.
Sure.
Because I can defend the science to a degree, but my thing is more philosophy. And yeah, I think I'd enjoy watching that conversation. But we'll see what happens.
Sure. Yeah, I would love. I'm hoping to have a little conversation with him about evolution. Maybe we can all go through different topics and points through it at
Yeah.
some point. But hopefully at the end we can address some evolution aspects. But thank you for everybody that's tuned in to this.
Yeah,
episode.
thank you.
We keep this one a little short, just so anyone in the future wants to watch the clip, they're not bombarded with an hour and 30-minute clip. They can kind of go through this. But we thank you all, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, guys.